kind of get into closing remarks, perhaps Hosam, back to you. Especially given SABIC's role as well of, driving really truly localization in the kingdom and in the region. I'd like to hear your perspectives on how localization is, as it relates to building supply chain resilience. How has that materialized? How has that evolved?
I believe the trend that we see and the need that being triggered and put more emphasis on during the pandemic is the importance of the localization. It's a risk that needs to be addressed. However, it is a very profitable risk because by localizing, you are contributing in the GDP. And for that reason, from SABIC perspective, we have always focused on enabling and growing the supply and commodity as well as the diversified portfolio and products. So how can we enable this? It's very important. It is not about only availing the raw material. We have cooperated with our customers under the local content and also had successful projects together under Nusanat. And I'm sure that also other companies in the region is having the same focus and also ambition to grow the localization from availability as well as making the customers competitive. When I look into the supply chain perspective of the localization and I bring it to a higher level to the GCC, you see that the region is more of an export-oriented. And we see that major countries that we are supplying, and they were heavily dependent in the past, they are building their own capacity. So without building your own capacity, you might end up with a product that you have no outlet for it. So it's also a mitigation to secure the outlet for the capacity that we are building on. Some products 20 years ago, certain countries, they were 100% dependent on import. Right now they are exporting. So it's a way that you contribute and requires, of course, the collaboration and the innovative mindset together with customer focused.
So very quickly, just perhaps before we kind of dive into questions from the audience, a quick 30-second closing remarks or thoughts, maybe starting with you, Henning, if you don't mind.
All right. I had prepared a 20-minute presentation for my closing remarks, but I'll try to cut that down to 30 seconds. Probably the 5 points that I've taken away to focus on and is in front of us is digitization, sustainability, people, and strategic partnerships. To that, I, as an observer to the industry as well, and a participant, I would like to add also speed of decisions. Because if there was something that COVID brought to light was both with us, with our partners, and with our customers, let's say, a shortage of end-to-end visibility and transparency on supply chains, but maybe even more so how certain companies, or some companies, many companies, the way we are organized in different silos, that we are organized in different functions, that, where are the different mandates to make decisions in an organization? Sometimes you actually had to go and try to find that particular mandate to make a decision for something that needed to happen relatively quickly. So it's been one of our learnings from this has been, A, to look at ourselves. Do we make our decisions fast enough so we can react to situations like the ones we have just been through? And secondly, we are having those discussions with many of our customers and partners, your decision-making process, because here are our observations from the 2 years of COVID. And there are certain things that we think we can do better together. So I think that's of all the other correct things we've talked about today, this is probably the one thing that I would like to add to that as well.
Thank you, Henning. Fikret?
Thank you very much. And simply, the future of logistics is digital connected, and autonomous. More agile, resilient, digitized global end-to-end supply chain solution will become a norm. Obviously, every industry has its own reality and dynamics. From a chemical and petrochemical perspective, how I see is the digital transformation will be the priority for all of us. Obviously, safety, security, and sustainability of chemical and petrochemical logistics and transportation will be at the heart of every action, initiative, and services. And the other point is there will be a strong focus and investment in new technologies like OCR, RPA for workflow and cost improvement projects. So these are my points as a closing remark.
Thank you, Fikret. Hosam?
I believe we are in an era where disruption is becoming the new norm. So the static model doesn't work anymore, and it will not help or sustain. It requires now, the new era requires more focus on the growth and deployment. What to produce, where to produce, and where to sell. And also put a more emphasis on the collaboration with all the stakeholders across the value chain. 5 elements needs to be encompassed in any supply chain strategy. Number 1 is people. Upgrading the people, grooming the talents, and with more focus on the analytical and projection and forecasting capabilities. Network competitiveness. The petrochemical industry is passing through also rainy time when it comes to the operating model. So each cent makes sense. We need to make sure that we always keep our network competitive to sustain our growth and competitiveness. Number 3 is the operational excellence, including the digitalization, making the organization more of innovative and solution-driven. The 4th thing is, of course, related to the customer satisfaction, balancing the service with the cost in a way that can help you to maintain your leadership. Last but not least is the circular economy / sustainability.
And I think that's a very, very good way to conclude, because sustainability is something that also is perhaps a theme that's also coming out of some of the questions. So if you don't mind, maybe perhaps we switch to some of the questions that are coming out from the audience. I'll start with, maybe I'll let Fikret or Henning respond to this, but one of the questions is, how have you as companies mitigated the risks associated with the recent or not so recent Suez Canal issue? So that being a disruption, how have your organizations responded to that historically?
I think, it's a good question, but difficult question from a global transport and logistics service provider. Obviously, such natural disaster or this type of crashes or crisis, we have limited control. During that time, what we did, we immediately put into place air bridge for some of our customers in the United States, moving cargo from that part of the world into the Middle East and East Africa or sub-India continent. And also we put immediately place our brake pulse solution for our clients. Obviously, it is really difficult to create a risk mitigation for such situation, but I think all our customers and as an organization, we took the necessary lessons. So that's what we discussed, the supply chain resiliency. In certain degree, we need to put importance to nearshoring or diversifying the supplier base in different geographies, not putting all the eggs in one basket. From a BDP's perspective, just the last example, how we diversify our risk as an organization. In the past, we only have a global service center in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, but now we have a new partner for business process outsourcing, and that business process outsourcing organization have 5 different locations for certain activities, and on top of it, as BDP, we created our own regional service center here, and in Istanbul, in Prague, and some other different cities, because the operational continuity is very important for our clients. Those are the actions we took during this period for risk mitigation.
Thank you. Perhaps moving to you, Hosam, and Fikret, probably just building on that before I move on to Hosam, is I agree with you that this was an event that was completely unplanned for, but I think it did teach us a few lessons again in terms of, like you said, some of the strategies that can be adapted to perhaps not completely mitigate the risk, but at least minimize the impact, to your point. Hosam, switching over to you, and hopefully this is something that you're familiar with. You spoke about procurement operating models evolving in this current situation. Would you be able to perhaps elaborate? There's one question on how have procurement functions evolved in this current context, and also perhaps if there is a touch on sustainability or sustainable procurement that also has, let's say, made the supply chain risk resilience topic more complex to deal with.
Yeah. I believe I emphasized at this point, and the procurement should not be looked at as a side of the supply chain. It's an integral part of the supply chain. The way that you need to sit or decide on your future is the way that you are building your sourcing strategy. And the strategy that we have built was having alternative options: exposure, optimizer, or high cost. So we elected to be an optimizer. So you see a portfolio of services that we are tapping on. The contract of affreightments, time charter, and spot. Sometimes, if you are not looking to the long term, you'll come and say, guys, the market is now in our favor. It's very long. Why do we go for contract? This terminology is not what we are aiming for. Of course, we are leveraging, but we are looking into the different segments, so we maintain position, which is the same as when we talked about the single source supplier risk. It's a risk that you need really to have different sourcing strategy and approach in order to address. Bringing that to the sustainability, part of the supply chain I believe you have asked about. The sustainability is not a project or a target. It's the way that we think and we live. And it's the same for us in SABIC and multiple also companies around the world and also governments. When we bring it to SABIC as an organization, you see that we have already started our transformation journey decades ago. When it comes to the CO2 purification unit, the True Circle portfolio, and others. Talking about the supply chain, it's a collaboration. We cannot solve and reduce the CO2 alone. It's a cooperation with our logistic partners along the value chain, where we are using an eco-friendly, high-efficient, dual-fuel vessels. This is number one. We are also playing our role in terms of the payload. We are having one of the largest vessels globally that can take one product to one direction, 80,000 tons. This is a huge saving in the CO2. We are increasing also the payload for our container ship. We improved it by 10%, so you calculate it back now to the CO2. Last but not least is our investment with the local authorities, like what we had with Saudi Arabian Railways, where we signed a term sheet where we are going to use the rail feature and connectivity with its advantages in terms of sustainability, safety, as well as reliability. We are also applying the e-trucks in part of our logistic locations that goes in the same line with our vision to be carbon neutral as being announced earlier.
I think that's all the time we have today for questions. Personally, I've really enjoyed the discussion, but maybe perhaps if I have to summarize our today's discussion. I think I'll pick on a few things. Hosam, I really liked the whole idea, and has set me thinking actually around how category strategy has actually played a key role, especially in the whole context of supply chain resilience. I think Henning, you spoke about focusing or refocusing data analytics to forward-looking, which is, if I may say, is more predictive rather than historically. And then Fikret, you spoke about how people as an aspect is also becoming very, very important. So with that, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to the speakers and to our moderator, Sachin, for a very enlightening session. We will now take a 30-minute break, and we will be back here soon after that. So please keep note of the notifications that you do receive on your phone. Please do enjoy the coffee break sponsored by our member, Kimanol. Thank you.